I want to show you now the agenda. I hope it works because, yes. So we are going to start right away with the Rise Up approach we have, the way how we are going to approach this idea of digital support for minoritized languages. And then we are going to present 3 projects to you. The first one is going to be made by Eddie Abila, who is from Rising Voices. Then we are going to have a presentation from Juan Vergara, who is presenting Fóra de Mapa. And the last presentation is from our colleagues working for within the field of Armenian. And I don't try to pronounce this name now because I have no idea how to pronounce it right. I hope you are going to do it afterwards. This is the first part. And in the second part, we are going to have 4 workshops. When we open the workshops, you will be able to join one of your interests. You can also, if you're already in one workshop, you can still change the workshop if you realize that something else might be more interesting for you. And then there's going to be a short wrap up. We also have prepared a short survey to have some feedback from your side. And then we hope to have a little time left for Q&A. We've got also a Slido here, and where you can type in your questions, and others can also give a thumb up, for example. So we see what the most interesting, most urgent questions would be. And then we will keep the room up open for discussion. If anybody wants to stay and further discuss, because I'm pretty sure that there is enough space and enough material for discussion. Yes. So I'd ask Yash now to present the Rise Up approach.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, works.
Perfect. So welcome everyone. I'm Yash from Nuo Games. We're part of the Rise Up project consortium and working specifically on the digital toolkit. And going towards the Rise Up approach towards revitalization of endangered languages, our main approach is through gamification and serious games. So let me quickly first go through a bit on what is gamification and serious games. Here, we don't use games just for fun and storytelling, but we use serious games or purpose-driven games specifically for other purposes. The primary purpose is not entertainment, but it's, for example, learning, education, information, training, and simulation. And we use the engagement that games or the methodologies of games have into focusing on these specific goals. In terms of Rise Up, the goal obviously being towards language learning as well as the uptake of the language and building a community or making the community more digital, let's say. Yeah, so the Rise Up approach into gamification, it includes the support of the project objectives in terms by developing the Rise Up. We are reviewing the previous work done and enhancing on that, as well as make that more useful with gamification, as well as use this for revitalization of the endangered languages. To give you a quick overview on how the Rise Up app would look like. So it will allow anyone to learn endangered languages and engage with the community. So you can go in and then choose a specific language that you want to be engaged with, and directly go into 3 specific functions that we have inside for each language. So the first would be learning games, specifically language learning games. Here you can go and play games very similar to apps that you might have used in the past, such as Duolingo. Sorry, someone was saying something. If not, okay. Yeah, such as Duolingo or any other application that you have used in terms of learning a new language. The second part being the community building. Here we would have something of a town hall for everyone in that community who's actually engaged with the language or want to organize events or just discuss. And people who are learning the language can also go there and discuss specific issues, either of the community or just in terms of the language learning. So this is something to make it more social and engaging. And the third part of the app would be tools for uptake, such as translation or dictionary or other resources. So of different types of languages, we have different resources available in formats such as documents, or it could be some media content such as videos or songs and other such tools. And we would use them integrated inside the app to actually go to allow the users to get more involved in how the language is being used in the culture right now. So these are the 3 main ways that in Rise Up we will approach the main uptake of or revitalization of endangered languages. With this, I think we would have the discussion later on, but if not, then I would say thank you. And yeah, back to you, Gisela.
Thank you, Yash. And we are proceeding, in case there are no urgent questions now, we are proceeding to Eddie Avila and Rising Voices.
Yeah, thanks. Hi everyone. My name is Eddie Avila. I'm the director of Rising Voices with the organization Global Voices. And for the past 10 years or so now, we've been working with indigenous language communities around the world, especially here in Latin America, to support them as they promote and continue to advocate for their language in digital spaces. And so for the last 10 years, we've been working with about 250 different activists who are using digital media technology and the internet to highlight their language. You use it by creating content, by just finding ways that their language and culture is reflected on these digital technologies. As I mentioned, we're a network of activists, and Rising Voices works to connect them, to create peer learning networks, provide training and mentoring, and just basically provide an opportunity for them to meet one another. Our first gathering took place, it'll be 10 years next year here in Mexico. I'm in Mexico, and we convened in Oaxaca together with some partners, knowing that there were speakers of these languages that are using these tools for language promotion, but they didn't necessarily know one another. And so we convened a space without a set agenda, and just an open call, not knowing who would answer the call. And in the end, we received about 150 applications for 30 slots. We started using the concept of digital activism at that time, knowing that sometimes maybe the word activist could conjure up some images or some ideas of rabble rousing or people troublemakers, people in the streets, but it really did capture what these individuals were doing, these communities were doing, that they wanted to see a concrete change in terms of their language and culture. They were doing purposeful activities, connecting. And so people did respond to this term of activism. And in the end, 30 people came together in Oaxaca. And time after time we heard people, oh, I thought I was the only person doing this work. It was just really amazing to see people connect and share their challenges, share their successes, but basically form this learning community in person that carried over online. And just we had a really interesting experience. So we replicated the experience in Colombia and Peru and Ecuador, Guatemala, Bolivia, and Chile, just as a way to connect people, just so that they have a space to share their projects, their campaigns, their initiatives, but really connect with like-minded people. And as a result of that, we started a series of advocacy social media accounts on Twitter, where every week or every so often we invited different activists to take over that account to share their own experiences and speak directly to a public that is interested in those topics. And we have Twitter accounts for Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, for Asia, Latin America, North America, and also for Europe. And so it's just a way for people to share directly their stories without any filter, and a way to connect people interested in these topics around language revitalization and how the internet is playing a role in that. And probably our flagship program right now is taking place here in Mexico, in southern Mexico, with Mayan language communities. And we're offering, we're in the second year of a project where we have a fellowship program where every year we select 10 speakers of Mayan languages who propose a community-based digital project. And so they get a small stipend, but on top of that, they join this peer learning community. We have 2 mentors who are from the same communities, who are actually part of that first event in Oaxaca, Mexico. And it comes full circle where now they're mentoring the next generation of activists. And so it's a really powerful way for that cycle to go forward, and hopefully it's a way for kind of this work to spread and for these young people to receive training, but also the kind of the model of peer learning where everyone is an expert in something, everyone has something to teach, everything's something that they want to learn. It's a more horizontal structure without experts and novices, but it's rather kind of equal space. And then we also run a year-end summit every year. And actually, I'm here in Mexico to plan the next one, which will take place in January in the city of San Cristobal in the state of Chiapas in Mexico, where we bring together the fellows, but also other activists from the region to share their experiences and so they connect with one another. And then finally, kind of a work in progress that we're doing is an online directory of digital projects where we invite projects that have some digital element to it to share their work, where they can be mapped and classified according to country, language, but also the tool that they're using. And so it's just a way to highlight, amplify, and celebrate all these amazing projects around the world, and hopefully it can inspire others who want to work with digital projects to connect. And we're doing it bilingually in Spanish and English, but it is a kind of kind of an ambitious project because the growth of these projects have really taken off. 10 years ago, maybe dozens of projects, but now we're talking about hundreds and even thousands of projects when you look at different online dictionaries in many languages. There's and that's something I'll talk about in my workshop, where we're putting together a toolkit, not necessarily for a recipe on how to use digital tools, but rather a roadmap for people who want to get started and may not know where to start. And so that's something we're working on. And yeah, that's sort of the nutshell for Rising Voices. You can find us on Instagram, especially, where we share some of our projects and highlight the fellows and things like that. So thanks, and we invite you to the workshop where, again, we'll talk about this toolkit project in collaboration with UNESCO, where we've been sort of mapping out different strategies, different approaches for digital activism. Thanks.
There are 2 short questions in the chat. Eddie, the first one is whether there is anything like what you are doing in Canada or the US you know of?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously our strength is in Latin America, but over the years we've been expanding our networks, reaching out to different activists. We have the North America Twitter campaign. I could share all the different links in the chat where we
Okay.
have been working with different activists in Canada and the United States. I think obviously it's sometimes a different context in terms of conditions or opportunities for different communities and how they're structured. But I think there's commonalities of just people wanting to see their language and culture reflected on the internet because they know it's a way to attract young people. It's a way to kind of say that we're here. And sometimes they say that if you're not on the internet, then sometimes you feel like you don't exist. And so it's obviously that's not so true, but it may seem that way. So people are using the internet to kind of highlight that all these initiatives are happening.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, why only on Twitter? Is it only on Twitter? It's not, right? You have other channels as well.
Yeah, the Twitter is more like advocacy campaigns for facilitating a space for activists to, show that multilingualism online is really important. So hear directly from them. Rising Voices has different channels, their own Rising Voices and Instagram and to some degree Facebook, but we're using specifically the Twitter campaigns for advocacy.
Okay.
And yeah, for now it's what we've chosen. We're looking at TikTok, but Twitter is sometimes has a lower barrier of entry because it is just text. It's not pressure to create a full video, but we realize that TikTok and Instagram and video is also a potential channel.
Okay, thank you. For the rest of the questions, I would like to ask people maybe addressing you directly because we are short of time, unfortunately. We are also giving the email addresses from our presenters at the end of the event. Okay, so next I would like to ask Juan Vergara from Fóra de Mapa.
So, good afternoon to all. Let me share the presentation.
Andreas.
Voilà. Share. Where is it? Here is it. Voilà. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, good afternoon. This is Juan Vergara, and together with my friend Maria Savaris, we have a podcast in Galician language called Fóra de Mapa. Galician language is the language of the Spanish autonomous region of Galicia. It's spoken by around 2.5 million people. It's very close to Portuguese, and it's an official language of this autonomous region. In my case, I'm a specialist in international relations, and I'm based in Brussels, while my colleague, she's a journalist, and she's based in London. Together, virtually, because we barely meet, we have produced this podcast which has already 38 episodes, and it is dedicated to talking about diversity in Europe and its surroundings. Our area of expertise is diversity in Europe, and we focus on cultural, linguistic, ethnic, and religious minorities in Europe. It's a very niche podcast, but it has had some success in the small Galician-speaking podcast community. Let's call it that way. The podcast was created, as many others, during the pandemic in January 2021. And it focuses on different regions, languages, regions like, for example, Normandy, Bavaria, Aragon, etc., or languages like the Irish language, which even if it's a national and official language is minorized, but also about countries with complex identities such as Montenegro, which has its different identity and the Serbian identity, or Cyprus, Moldova, etc. Together with the podcast, we have our social media, which work as a complement to the podcast because, for example, on Twitter, we tend to to communicate and to disseminate information about diversity constantly. We usually publish 2-3 tweets tweets or threads every week on the podcast or on things related to the podcast about which we don't have episodes. We also have an Instagram account where we publish our visuals. As you can see, with every podcast we publish a map, in this case the map of the disparition of the Cornish language, to which we dedicate the podcast. We also have Facebook for those who still use that social account, and Goodreads because we'd like to share with our followers the bibliography that we use for every episode. And in every episode, we try to cover the different aspects of every minority, from the language, if they have their own language, to the history, which is probably the most important part of every episode. Also the politics, the official status of the language or the minority, whether the region where they live have autonomy, the parties that represent them, whether there are separatist movements, etc. Also conflicts, in case there are conflicts, not only armed conflicts, but also social conflicts, etc.
Juan,
Sure.
sorry if that I interrupt you, but we see the slides in not in presentation mode, but in the other mode. So if you change slide, we don't see it.
I was seeing it in presentation mode. And now?
Okay. Now we see the last slide. It's still the PowerPoint, the usual PowerPoint interface.
Okay.
But it's yeah.
What about now?
Yeah, wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the correction. And we also interview about 1 or 2 people in every episode. They are usually activists of every minority, from every minority, but also university professors or celebrities, let's call them that way, of the different minorities that we cover. Regarding our audience, surprisingly, is not the majority of those who listen to us are not Galician or don't live in Galicia, because 21% of them they listen us from abroad. In the case of Galicia, we have a specific advantage, which is our language is quite similar to Portuguese, so that opens us the gates to a quite strong community. But of course, there are plenty of emigrants, Galician immigrants that live abroad. There are some other people who simply can understand the language, because if one speaks Portuguese or Spanish, it's not that difficult to understand. And moreover, we are part of 2 communities that were created recently during the pandemic, which are Pod Galego and Obradoiro Digital Galego, which during the last few years, they have been supporting the growth of this ecosystem of Galician-speaking media content creators. In the case of Galego, is specialized or focused on podcasts. And in the case of Obradoiro Digital Galego, which is something more, let's say, more formal, it covers podcasts, YouTube, Twitch, streamers, etc. And in the case of these 2 communities, I'm going to talk about that later during the workshop. But they have done a great job, because it has really fostered the creation of new contents in a minorized language, which not always has, or not always, which usually doesn't have a very strong support from the regional and local authorities. And this all has been done due to the hard work of activists that don't get anything in return. So it's quite, what they are doing, it's a quite important task. And regarding the problems that this podcast might have, I think every podcast in Galicia at the moment, is the lack of time. We are back to our normal lives, and we have our jobs. So we cannot dedicate as much time as during the pandemic, that's obvious, but especially breaking the barriers, because I believe that one really has to be committed to the language, or to have a quite strong interest in finding contents in Galician language or in any other minorized language in order to consume this type of content. I mean, one can have a quite a strong audience, but if that audience is composed of just activists or people who have this strong commitment to the language, you are always addressing the same type of public. So sometimes it's very difficult to reach other type of publics that might have a positive approach towards the language, or simply a positive approach towards the content. They might like your content because it's well done and so on, but that would not look for or consume media content in Galician, because maybe they cannot simply think about consuming that, because in the case of our language is still minorized, and there are still a lot of stereotypes that fall on the language. And I think this is it. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Moreover, we will talk about the collectives later on during the workshop.
Thank you so much. I don't see any open question now here in the chat. So I would like to ask Elena now to present their project in Armenian, for Armenian.
Thank you, Gisela. Can you all hear me well? Okay, so I will share my screen. Is that okay?
Elena, we can hear you, but it's a bit fuzzy. Maybe you could reconnect the mic?
Yes. Let me try. Is now better? Yes. Okay. Can you hear me better now?
No, not really. Maybe you could speak very loudly.
Yes, yes, I will try to put some more
Thank you.
energy. It's okay now. So
Yeah,
I
or maybe you can also put the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth. Maybe this helps.
yes,
I don't know.
Yes. This I can try and make it stronger a little bit. It's okay?
It's about the same, but
Yes. Let's start, and perhaps in the meantime it will go better. So
Just please really try to scream as much as possible.
okay, so scream louder. I don't know if anybody here is familiarized with what Armen community is. So we are Armen or Armenian. Armen is what we call ourselves. The name of the project is Anveatsã Armãneashti, the one that Gisela couldn't pronounce. So it's about the Armen language. It's a language spoken in the Balkans. We are a minority spread all over the world, but originally from the Balkans. So Armenians are living nowadays in Romania, in Greece, in Serbia, in Albania, but also all over the world. There are strong communities in Australia, France, Germany, and United States of America. So what we did with my friend here, Florentina, and our NGO in Romania, several years ago, 2015, 2016, we received funds to make this project, Anveatsã Armãneashti project, and one of the main outcomes of the project was the platform online Anveatsã Armãneashti, which was a kind of premiere. Now, our language didn't have before these kind of tools to be learned or teach. So, this was our best result in terms of sustainability. Because after nowadays, after we are in 2023, so 7 years after the complete finish of the project, we still have something that can be used, and it is open to all interested people. So our platform is structured in 3 chapters. If you can see my screen, this is the first chapter, which is structured really very similar to the Duolingo platform. You have a series of basic exercise, structured very similar to Duolingo, and here you can, for example, we can try this one. I didn't say yet about the 3 age groups, but it will come. Firstly, I said about the way that the platform was structured, because I was mainly speaking about the e-learning platform. The project, another outcome, the most important outcome of the project was, of course, creating content to teach the language. So creating content for 3 different groups of age. Now for kids of 6, 8 years old, for teenagers and adults, and for kids from 9 to 13. So this is, it helps. Okay, I can put you on the chat also the site of the where you can see the platform. So, as I was saying, we have like 3 chapters of the platform. The one which is organized as the Duolingo, where you have this button, it has its name is END, now END, because it has English as support, as it is addressed to all Armenians living all around the world that perhaps are not speaking anymore their mother language, Armen language, but they surely speak English, if not, as English is the most accessible language nowadays, no, to a lot of people. So here we have, for example, a kind of exercise. You can see the image, and you have to learn the word. Translation for plate. I was doing wrong that, no? Because plate in Armenian you say tini. Next. So here is my result. See? Then translation for wine. So in Armenian we say wine in.
Yin.
Now this I was right. So you can see here my
Elena,
levels.
sorry,
Yes.
Elena, sorry, we cannot see the exercise that you are doing.
No,
No?
we're seeing it. It's fine.
We see only the first page, but it's okay. I think it's okay. If you cannot show us the exercise, it's not a problem.
I think that's not for everybody, because we can see it pretty well.
Yes. I'm glad that We can do, for example, translation for chicken is pui. Here,
Pui.
actually, when you press a button, you can hear how the word sounds, and then you can check. So I was right also. For egg, we say oh. Okay, so this perhaps any of you which is familiar with Duolingo knows how this works. I will leave now this application. Then we have the part of exercise, the second chapter, the kind of exercise in lingua. I mean, you have to know a little bit of Armen in order to work on this chapter. Okay, so here you can see, for example, we have different kinds of exercise. These are the chapters. We decide voarly means arrange the words. So you have to know, for example, a small poem in Armenian, so you can do this exercise. Yara doi, năsu, năsa. You check, and I am right. Okay. So another, if I'm not right, my evolution here, it will not be so satisfactory. Okay, so I will, yes, I want to get another kind of application is it's a kind of karaoke. I mean, I don't know if, because here you have a voice also of one of our friends which is registered. So these are like small poems that you can hear how they sound. And this is not, and you can learn the poems. Munti cu munti se adună. And here, yeah, I don't see now these are small poems. I wanted to show you another one, which are audio synchro. This here we have like a small story, but for some reason I don't know why now this doesn't work very well. And here was a kind of exercise like karaoke. I don't know why it doesn't. And so anytime you put your mouse on a word, you can hear how it sounds while this is scrolling. Then on this part, on the third chapter, we have the levels. This is N is nivel, which is level 2, and are the sheets of the classes. These are all the sheets that we had like 40 classes, an hour of 40, a total of 40 hours of language for the kids, small kids. And these were like they look like. From here, anyone that wants to do Armenian in-house, actually this was taught like this, that an Armenian mother like me or like other friends of mine, which have small kids at home, they can do this exercise with them. These are not things that kids can do alone. So it's different from the first chapter of the platform where you could do by yourself some exercise. If we go back to lessons and go, these, for example, are the sheets for the adults, which are have a different content. For someone that already know the basics, this actually was addressed to a group of older people that already have the capacity, the competence to speak the language, but they never wrote it, or they have, as I did, the strange idea that the language, it was not possible to be written, because it was not a language, it was only a dialect. So we have, as we had this problem that we were considered for a long time and still now a dialect of the Romanian language, a lot of people think that we cannot write in Armenian, and when on the other side, we can write in Armenian, but we have like a dispute on how to write, because we have like two accepted ways of writing the language. So this is mainly our platform. Here on this on this part, we can see the people that are interested and that are entering to see the platform. I mean, we have a kind of, I'm sorry. I think I had a problem with the site, but mainly this was the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Elena. I want to point out once again about the possibility to write some questions into the chat, and we try to answer them while during the presentations or whatever. We have now a question for you on Slido. Slido, you can get you can open Slido if you go to the three dots on the right hand side, on the lower right hand side.
Yes.
And there you've got a question which you please answer.
Okay.
It's for all. It's for all. It's for everybody.
How is your language data protected?
Which language variety or varieties are you most interested in? That's the question on Slido. Thank you, Elena, for now.
Okay, I will close my.
Okay, thank you.
Gisela, I think you're muted, just to let you know.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Typical mistake. No, I just wanted to say, Elena, there are two more questions in the chat in the meantime, which are related to your presentation. First, or so how is the language data protected?
I don't understand the question, actually. I don't know if it's a problem of English. The language data, what means?
I guess the corpus, like the language basics, the
It's not
vocabulary.
protected. It's not protected. I mean, I don't know what protection of the protection of a language is protected when you have an institution where you can teach it. We don't have that.
Heather,
don't know.
do you want to pose the question yourself vocally?
Yes.
Helena, the question is related to copyright. If I understand right.
Thanks Heather Sudadeshna Karshan. Hello, this is Heather. I'm coming to you from a small community called Camperville in Manitoba, Canada. And in North America, at least, data sovereignty is a really big issue because we've seen large corporations like, for example, Meta, doing data scraping off of websites, even when it's been prohibited, and doing speech to text to speech modeling and things like that without contacting the communities. And so there's some grave concerns about how things could be put out there that are inappropriate, that the speakers never would have said themselves, and things like that. So I'm just kind of interested in if this is an issue, or where you come from and what's being done.
We don't have.
I answered that we don't have experience in this respect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No, it's just it's something that's really big here. So thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can just give a quick answer to that question. In general, in Europe, data sovereignty is not a big problem that we are facing today. But obviously, also, since we are working with languages which are not that spoken or are endangered, big companies are also not targeting the communities or the language, at least in Europe right now, which is essentially also part of the problem, because companies like OpenAI, which has ChatGPT, they don't produce anything relevant for these languages. And yes, I think someone wrote about GDPR. Yes, we have GDPR, which is about the data protection of users, and in general, language by itself is a public thing, so we can't really have any protection on it. But yes, the user data and things like that, they're always protected in any of the tools that are shown here, according to GDPR.
Thank you for your response. I just wanted to very quickly say what the problem really has been is that there have been elders that what we call elders here anyways, mother tongue speakers who passed on or have said certain things, and then their language, the data is being scraped, and then these models are being used to say things they never would have said, or things that are culturally or even in some cases spiritually inappropriate without permission, even when it was explicitly stated on website. This kind of thing has happened. And because things move so quickly with AI and other things, even peer-reviewed papers that are in the process of being peer-reviewed that are out there as preprints, people are using that information, and then it's becoming exponentially faster and faster, and it's harder to catch up. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks. Essentially not a big problem in at least the languages we are targeting, but it's something to keep in mind. So thanks a lot.
Thank you as well. I think we can now proceed to the workshops. As I said before, we are going now to open the breakout rooms. And the thing is, you go on the icon for participants, and then you see on the upper right corner the sessions have been started, and you choose the session which you're most interested in. So in session 1 is with Eddie Avila, session 2 is with Juan, session 3 is with Elena and Florentina, and session 4 is somebody who I did not introduce yet. That's my colleague Marie. She's working on a first draft concept of a linguistic atlas, and yes, she wants to share with you her first thoughts on this, and we already had some internal discussions on this also within Rise Up. So please choose your sessions, and we will meet each other here at 3:30 in half an hour. It's 3:30 now. Okay. Musst jetzt alle zurückkatapultiert. Okay, sorry for the maybe abrupt end of the groups. And welcome back to the plenary session. I would like to have a short recap now from the different groups, and I ask Violetta for giving us a short summary on her group.
Yes. Are you going to share the presentation?
Yes. One
Thank
second.
you.
I hope I can do it.
Otherwise, I can also try. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, what we talked about is digital campaigning in the context of minoritized languages. And Eddie presented to us what they are working on at the moment, which is a toolkit for the promotion of indigenous languages in digital spaces. And they're also collaborating with UNESCO on that. The goal of what they're creating is to present a framework of key approaches that build kind of a roadmap for people who want to develop their own digital activism and want to see their own community represented in digital spaces more. So it's not like a step-by-step approach, but more to give a general framework of what can be done in order to achieve your own individual goals. Yeah, and so these key approaches that he presented are facilitate, multiply, normalize, educate, recover, imagine, defend, and protect. And yeah, I mean, I can't go into detail now on what each of those specifically mean, but maybe Eddie can also share his presentation in the end. And we will also anyhow have a recap of all the workshops on our website in the end. Yeah, so these 8 approaches serve as a starting point for digital activism. They don't completely represent the whole spectrum of what can be done, but it's more like an orientational framework. Then the question was raised of how to measure the impact of activism, because this goes way beyond just quantitative indicators like how many likes you have or how many views something has, but like the qualitative aspect of this has to be considered as well. Yeah, another question that was raised was on how communities can get funding for like their own projects. So yeah, what Eddie raised is that there are specific support opportunities, but usually not enough funding. And there are also issues for activists who are acting on their own and not having any legal representation on actually getting that funding. So another solution that is also often brought up is crowdfunding. And lastly, Eddie also shared with us that they work together with a fellowship program that supports people from Mayan communities in South Mexico, where they receive a small stipend and they show support to their community and also build learning communities where they share their experiences, basically. Yeah, that's it from my side, I think.
Okay, then I'm going to continue. So I tried to take notes a bit, and I hope I didn't take anything wrong. So first we were talking about the status of Galician, which, if I understood it correctly, has been a co-official language since a couple of years now. And its prestige is rising, but the old attitudes are still there, of course. Galicia has a large diaspora, which is, of course, good, which shows also in the podcast community, as we've heard before. And there are also 3 types of orthography, and the community lives also from a strong activism with lots of organizations which are into the topic. Here, as in many communities, the pandemic played an important role when it comes to social media and digital digital offers. So I also included here the link from the podcast of Juan. And in the course of this podcast, they were able to establish contact with many different groups, and especially the collaboration with schools was very good, where they also had a project, for example, where they could create own content in Galician, and the podcasts could be used in school lessons as well. They also managed to have an own suffix for net addresses, like the .eu for Europe. They have an own suffix .gal for Galician. And nevertheless, of course, the work is on the shoulders of people who are doing this for free. But one of the gains could be more skills, for example, on podcasting, how to do podcasts or whatever. And then Juan was also talking about that they have a collective of minority languages in Spain. And he was wondering why in many other countries these language activist groups are not so much working together. And then last but not least, we were also talking about a network of social media based in Southern Tyrol, which is called Midas. Yeah. That's it from my side. Celine?
Yes, can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. So in our breakout group, we discussed the Arman or Armenian communities, and we learned some quite interesting facts and figures about this language community. First of all, it is a small community originating from the Balkan, and there are around 2 million speakers, although this is not really well known, the exact number, but there is at the moment, I think, an online census also done to get more accurate data on that. And the language is also categorized as definitely endangered according to the UNESCO Atlas of Endangered Languages. And then we discussed several aspects, for example, the causes related to language loss, and also strategies to stop language loss, and some of the strengths and limitations of the platform. So relating to the causes of language loss, first of all, there are issues surrounding discrimination, but then also social and economic factors such as urbanization, intermarriage, pressure to use the dominant language. And there are also issues or causes in the realm of language planning and education. So for example, we also discussed that there was an idea that Armenian maybe cannot be written and can therefore not be taught in school. But as the project showed, this is really not the case, and the contrary was really shown by the e-learning platform and by the project. And then, of course, there are also factors, cultural factors such as globalization or cultural homogenization. And regarding strategies to stop language loss, of course, resources are very important in the printed form, recorded resources, but also e-learning resources. Then also community language courses are an essential tool. And of course, what is essential is also the recognition and support of local governments or politicians and so on. So that is also really important. And some also gave the inputs in the chat that it's really important to, again, also consider teaching languages in a classroom to support this and to also make the language relevant in everyday life. And then regarding the strengths and limitations of the platform, so for the strengths, as was already mentioned before, this is the first e-learning platform for Aromanian. It is free. And what is also really essential is this karaoke type tool on the platform where people can really also learn the correct pronunciation. What was challenging when creating the platform was the lack of standardization of the language. So there are many dialects, and it seems like some people even refrain from using the platform because they didn't find their dialect on there. So this was one challenge. And then also, at the moment, are not many feedback tools or analytics present in the platform, although there is an email address that can be used, and there is also a Facebook group, I think, where people can also connect and provide feedback. And there was also already really positive feedback also received over this Facebook group. And then also the maintenance of the platform is a challenge. And then regarding orthography, there was also a short discussion, and we were also explained that there were inputs used from linguistic experts, and in fact, sounds and all varieties of the language can be represented with the orthography. And then we were also given important links. So for example, links to the app, but also links for the project info. If you want to, I can also share this via the chat or thank you, Violetta. And then I think you also said that you would be able to share a link to an audiobook with songs for children in Romanian on it, and also traditional songs, but also modern songs. So maybe if you send this to us, we can then also share it with the participants that are interested in that. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay,
So-
last but not least.
Yes, thank you. I think the people who were in my group were the map enthusiasts. So thank you so much for all of your input. We gathered a lot of ideas of what could be included in the sort of linguistic atlas that we are working on at the moment. So some people said they would be interested in a map that shows the biocultural diversity and the linguistic diversity, which I think is a very interesting idea. One person recommended the map of regional languages of France, which is a great resource, and I have had a look at that already. One very interesting suggestion was that very often, if sign languages are included in an atlas, they are always separate. So one suggestion was to maybe create a map that includes both the sign languages and the spoken languages at the same time, which we would definitely consider for the future. And a visual representation of the language, of the levels of language vitality. I'm very glad that that came up, because that is sort of exactly what we are going for in one of our first steps in this map. When we talked about the technological levels, we very, very quickly agreed that Google Maps is a bit of a problem, because it is usually the first thing that is suggested, but they have had an immense price hike that makes it nearly impossible for people to afford. So somebody suggested OpenStreetMap. Thank you very much. I will look into that. Somebody also said that there is no sense in reinventing the wheel, and I should definitely reuse Wikimedia, and data is already there, which is a fantastic point. Somebody suggested also Translators Without Borders, because they have fantastic maps already, especially when it comes to power imbalances, which I will look into definitely. And this is the link to the Jamboard that we filled out together, including suggestions for what people would like to see in a linguistic atlas, what they are interested in, who we should definitely contact. So if you are also interested in this, we will make that available as well, and you can fill it in afterwards. One suggestion on the Jamboard as well was to make it fair. So that is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, which I thought was quite a good idea. So yes, thank you very much to all the map heads.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. We are approaching the end of our event today. I wanted to give you some final information. We are going to publish a review article on this workshop on our website, which is the link given here. Then we also send out regular newsletters with updates. So if you want to keep informed, to stay informed with the project, you have the possibility to register for our newsletter. We are having, we are also planning to have a page on our website where you can introduce your own ideas on or your own projects. But this is very much a draft idea and very much in the making. But yeah, we want to tell you now anyway, nevertheless. And we also wanted to announce that we will keep WebEx open now a little longer until 6 p.m. So if you want to discuss further and you're not too tired for this yet, you have the possibility. Then I also wanted to share with you the contacts of today's presenters. Yes, and so we have a couple of minutes left for questions and answers. Any comments, any questions? Yes, we are aware of the Endangered Language Project. There are a lot of projects on endangered languages already out there, and we also have tried to map them. Okay. Thank you for the recommendation. And thanks for the compliments. We have not considered a MOOC yet, but we might. There is still some time left. We just started the project in February, and it's going to last 3 years. But we also have a collection of methods and identification of good methods. So maybe we can use this information also for a MOOC, but I won't promise now. We have it not in the contract. The question about language revitalization. I could give you my personal opinion, but I don't want to say this in this in this field. I think.
Yeah,
well,
sorry.
maybe,
I was
yeah.
asking this question because I'm currently having a seminar in my master's degree, and that's the question of the seminar. And so we've heard today a lot about protecting languages, promoting them. And so I really wanted to ask about that because it really is the question, is it possible, and how you go about it? So I actually would love to hear about it.
Well, actually, I have to say, in my opinion, language revitalization is a very, very complex matter, and there are so many different things which play a role in this. Not at least prestige, for example, and language attitudes, and in my opinion, also such a thing like economy, like legal protection, and so on. So I think it's not a simple yes or no answer. Heather, please.
We prefer not to not to talk about dead but sleeping on this side of the Atlantic anyways. And it might be of interest to you, to the person who asked the question, to check out the Miami Language Initiative with Daryl Baldwin, where they, in their community, their language had gone to sleep, and they took documentation and have brought it back into their community. So that might be just one example of
may I ask you, maybe
useful to you.
Could you put it in the chat also for the others so that one can take this information?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah. Ich sehe das jetzt nicht. Eben, danke, danke. Ja, ja. I think if Juan is still here, I think in Spain they already had good experiences with positive language policy. Would you like to answer, Juan?
Sure. Podcast we interviewed Gila Zuckerman, who is a big specialist on the resurrection or awakening of languages. He has been working in Australia for a few years already at the University of Adelaide, and we wanted to interview him in order to talk about the Cornish language. It was a great pleasure to talk with him. He's a very passionate man about this subject, and we recommend the book. I put the link there in the chat of WebEx. And regarding the Spanish case, it depends on the region. In the case of the Basque language, the success has been enormous because when Franco died in 1975 and democracy returned to Spain, the situation of the language was really, really bad. While nowadays, even if it's still a minority language, the prestige is way higher, and the big majority of students or the big majority of parents of children, they choose Basque education instead of Spanish education. That tells a lot about not only about the prestige of the language, but also about the commitment of society. And in Catalonia is something very similar, but in other regions like Galicia, the Balearic Islands, or Comunitat Valenciana, now it's a bit different because of the political situation. If the regional government has a strong commitment towards the language, it has the tools to implement a strong revitalizing language revitalization policy. Of course, those tools are both legal, and they are included in the Spanish constitution and in the regional constitutions, and they are also budgetary. The problem is the political will of the regional governments, and there are cases in which they have the will, and they have had the will for 40 years, as in the case of the Basque Country and Catalonia, and you can see the results. While in others, these language policies have been way less successful, as in the case of Galician language in Galicia. Some professors even called it low-intensity language normalization, which is, it hasn't changed the status quo. Even if Galician language has more prestige, is normalizing, or more or less normalized in certain sectors, it still hasn't been able to, not to replace the Spanish language as the prestige language, but at least to be at at a similar level of prestige. Nor it has been able, the regional government hasn't been able to implement a language policy that is able to fight stereotypes, effectively. I mean, nowadays, those stereotypes that they used to be used against the speakers, even if they are not as visible or they are not expressed in a direct way, they still exist, and we, Galician speakers, we still suffer them, even if it's in an indirect way. So, well, as I've said before, Spain is ahead if we compare it to other countries like France or like Italy, but still there are big problems in some specific regions because of the political will of the regional government.
Okay, thank you. Heather?
If my hand is still up, I'm sorry. I will put it down.
Yes, thank you for the links, by the way. Also from Elwin, I saw he put a link for how to create a MOOC in the chat. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? If not for now, I will close the official part, and whoever wants to stay can stay and discuss. You are, as I said before, we have recorded this and it's going to be online, and you will also get some information on this via our newsletter and everything. Thanks everybody for joining. It has been a pleasure, and hope to see you at our next event as well. Have a nice day. Bye.